The dust is real, and so is the multiverse. Asriel's up in the north, and the Gobblers might be joining him soon. Stay tuned as we discuss episode 1 and 2 of his Dark Materials.
I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Hey everybody, I'm Rachel Goodman, and joining me tonight is fellow Philadelphian. He's also an editor and producer at AfterBuzz. Please welcome Vito.
Hello everybody, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you very much, Rachel.
Yeah, of course.
His Dark Materials.
So, just to kind of like throw this out there, Vito and I were talking before. So you have not read the books yet,
I
right?
have never read the books. I have read very brief things about the books, but I know nothing about the actual story.
Awesome, which is a really good thing considering I have read the books, so some of this is not quite a surprise to me as we're watching.
But it's all a surprise to me.
And speaking of surprises, definitely stay tuned. The way we're going to work this particular show, we are going to discuss episode 1 first, then we're going to jump to episode 2. At the very end, we're actually going to do a page-to-screen adaptation segment, followed by our news, which is going to be fun, and then we'll do predictions. So you definitely want to stick on through till the end because we've got some extra special stuff going on here tonight. Let's dive in because we have a lot of content to cover. Okay, so Lyra's life at Jordan, that's the first topic I want to talk about. Everything kind of leading up to Asriel's, not return because he's been in her life, but okay, as somebody who's not read the books, what was your take on this world, seeing it and seeing what her life was like?
I love the aesthetic of Jordan College. I love how they presented it as kind of like, here's a college that's literally a kingdom in and of itself. They kind of like, Jordan is also kind of Oxford. It seems like it's almost one and the same, but Jordan is obviously separate. I just loved seeing all of this, like, it felt really like old in the way that it was while still having some modern taste to it in the way that especially Lyra acts. She's such a rambunctious little person, and I love her. I love her immediately too.
Her energy instantly for me was her energy and her friendship with Roger.
Yeah.
I instantly bonded with her and Roger.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was already on her side, and I trusted her. And it was, I also felt kind of bad for her because here's a young person who doesn't have any real parental figures.
I definitely felt for her, but it was so obvious to me how much the school had taken care of her and that she was getting through it regardless, which I learned while watching this first episode that the given trust that I gave immediately to her and to Roger is definitely lacking in most characters that we meet in this. I didn't trust most of the characters presented to us, especially in the terms of how they related to specifically her.
So let's talk about that then.
Okay.
Lord Asriel, we meet him pretty quickly. We met him in the prologue. I always call it prologue as a book person.
I guess it is.
It is. It's a television prologue.
Yeah.
So we meet him. He's the first character we meet. And then we see his return 12 years later when we get the sense that he has been in Lyra's life. But this particular time he returns and we see the Master trying to poison him. So here's the real question. Speaking of adults and other characters you don't trust, what do you make of Asriel and this whole situation with the other scholars at Jordan College?
I love the feeling of an adventurer that goes off and unfortunately leaves everything that he cares about behind. Yeah. It's a very particular character, and I feel as though Asriel fits that kind of dynamic perfectly. I mean, you can probably tell me more about this kind of dynamic than anybody else, I'm sure, when it comes to the amount of books that you've read, but that particular kind of scholar that wants to learn everything about everything but doesn't want anything else to do with anything else is so intriguing to me. And to see kind of him work in this scholastic, what was it called? Scholastic?
It was the
sanctuary, scholastic sanctuary that he has. Definitely a strange concept, but a really interesting one for him to go out and freely learn these things under the guise of this like religious group that like controls whether people can learn things or not. Well, how do you feel about that, knowing what you know?
The Magisterium.
Yeah, the Magisterium.
I'm trying, so as a viewer and someone who loves the books, I'm trying to separate myself from the books because there are there are enough differences where you can do that. It is very faithful to the books, but at the same time, I'm going to pretend like I have not read them because
that would be really
Yeah.
helpful for me at least. I'm
yeah.
sure some of our viewers are also first-time viewers of the His
Yeah.
Dark Materials concepts.
And I also don't want to give anything away for somebody who is watching this show and has not read the books.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that I talk about outside of page to screen, and I'll tell you when we're going to get there. I'm going to try not to spoil anything.
Mm-hmm. Try to be
that would-
spoiler-free
yeah,
as possible.
Yeah. And it might not happen in the show anyway,
Mm-hmm.
so we'll just safely, stick, kind of dodge that.
By the way, how do you feel about like the church aesthetic? I really like when people can present that kind of aesthetic really well, and I think HBO is doing a great job.
what I especially love about the show is how everything is linked to the church, and everything's very biblical. The Jordan College, the cardinal, father, the way that the magisterium is, they chant Latin. And
They did chant Latin in this episode, didn't they?
It feels very, very Roman Catholic to
I
me.
agree, and I grew up in a Roman Catholic kind of, Catholic upbringing. I'm sure you did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Philly. But yeah, and the aesthetic was so immediately I wouldn't call it comfortable, but familiar.
Yeah.
I understood, especially from like my teachings of like, this is what the church was like, and this is what the church does. Very much prevalent there.
And I feel like Philip Pullman, as the author, when he wrote the books, and now that they're doing the adaptation onto screen, I feel like it's very much trying to pull on this idea of the heretic and hearsay, and they're trying to make a very obvious statement about not being able to speak your truth, and certain things like the gobblers, which have to, people are almost afraid to talk about it, and it's interesting. So we'll get to that in a second, but just to kind of touch a little bit more on Asriel and her relationship with, his relationship with Lyra, we get this whole dynamic between the two of them that's very heartwarming. It all leads up to this moment where Lyra, who isn't sure she can trust the Master anymore, the Master ends up giving Lyra the golden compass, aka the alethiometer, and so it's interesting the way that they're setting it up, that no adult, Lyra's not getting the full truth from any adult in her life.
I think that was a proper way to kind of present the characters in this, because you can even see like the Master, for instance. I don't believe that he did that on his own fruition. I don't know how you feel about that, but every bit of what he was doing was so obvious to me that he didn't want to do it, but he felt as though he had to do it from the Magisterium.
And I think the situation too, I agree with you. And I also think that the way that the Master was kind of weighing this out, I think it was a moral calculus, like a decision that he was like, okay, well, if I don't do something, if I don't get rid of Asriel, then
Kill
more
one, save
people are going to die.
Yeah, kill one, save 1,000, or kill 1,000, save one. But I don't think the math adds up here.
No, but there's something, like, just from seeing in episode 2, we'll get to that later, but just from seeing the Master go to the Magisterium, something seems off.
Definitely.
But Lyra does get the golden compass, and
which I know nothing about. I know nothing about what this thing does. I've never even seen the movie. I don't know what this thing does.
So it's yeah.
I'm so excited because so far all it is a piece of metal, and I know that it's not going to be, especially since the first book / the movie was all about this thing. I'm so excited to see what Lyra is going to do with it.
And at this point, she cannot do anything because she has not realized how to work it.
Yeah.
But so we have everything going on with them. And then we get to the gobblers and Billy being taken away. What did you make of that moment?
The actual tradition in itself was so sweet for the kid to Billy's brother, to actually get the demon that it was him turning into a man. For this to happen, it had me, I admit, it kind of threw me for a loop because I thought the dude that whistled and had the wolf was like, oh, he is the gobbler. I didn't realize it was a group of people, which is kind of wild to think about, especially as this episode progresses and you hear more that this is an ongoing thing. I thought they played this story out super well, and the expansion on the civilization that goes throughout with the Egyptians, I thought that was incredible.
Well, I think what I found especially interesting is that we started to learn how the demons were very connected to their person.
Yeah.
That was, I loved how they introduced that. I love how we almost see the demons as being very, they're the protector of whoever they're with. And what I loved about the coming of age ceremony that Tony had is that we learned more about the world, and we learned that the demon is not going to take on a permanent form until their person is an actual adult, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Another biblical reference, because in the Jewish faith, in Catholicism too, confirmation, you are
good point.
You're like 12, 13.
I thought you were gonna bring some stuff about like animals into this, like the development of it. And I was like, where did I miss that chapter? That would make Catholicism so much cooler.
But it's like speaking of all these biblical references, the children themselves, like Tony to me is still a child.
Oh yeah.
But they're saying, hey, you're an adult now, and he looks
You're
about
a
13.
man now. You get this, squirrel.
Yeah.
Oh no, he got a bird, didn't he?
I think his demon morphed into a bird permanently.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I kind of want to mention too while we're talking about all this is this idea of the dust. And what we're quickly learning in this world is that Asriel made some discovery up in the north, and that this discovery of dust, one, could lead to different worlds, but then two, we kind of are starting to learn that it does not affect children.
Which is, I feel like they're throwing that as like I don't know. I don't know how much I believe that. I know that's what they're establishing, but I just don't understand it yet. I don't even really understand what dust is generally.
Well, and I'm going to touch on this now, even though it's a little more episode 2, but it's interesting because just to jump forward for 1 second, Lyra and Coulter, when they were talking about electrons, and Lyra's answer was, well, dust, they're electrons too, but they're just not negatively charged. That's the idea I'm getting from that. And when Asriel mentioned photons, I'm getting that essentially it's almost like energy that is surrounding, that basically illuminates something that you wouldn't otherwise know is there.
Man, so this is really on the nose about religion versus science, isn't it?
and the church, a.k.a. the Magisterium, they are all like, no.
You can't talk about such things.
Exactly. And they're like trying to off everybody who's involved. But at the same time, the Gobblers, as we're starting to learn more about them, so we're getting some factions between the Oblation and the Magisterium. But before we get there, just to kind of finish off our talk of episode 1, we get this woman named Coulter, who arrives to Jordan College.
Immediately bad energy.
Yeah.
Immediately. First of all, I just want to congratulate her on such a fantastic performance so far.
Ruth Wilson.
Can't wait. Ruth Wilson, fantastic job. Can't wait to see the rest of what you do with this character. But oh my God, horrible energy. Just like, even the pleasantness, I just thought she did such a good job at bringing forth this character that was supposed to be so motherly, but there's just something right off. Just right off.
Yeah. She's playing this role incredibly, because you could just feel that she was manipulative enough to have an effect on a 12-year-old child without a 12-year-old understanding that she was being manipulated. So I believe that. But
she was just too nice.
Lyra is also somebody who does not have a mother and doesn't have, her she had Asriel.
Father figure.
But he kept popping in and out of her life.
I was about to say, he didn't do a very good job as an uncle.
Yeah. Even if this was her real uncle, like he was just, piss poor at it. But the whole thing is that when she came into the room, I knew instantly that she was going to mess with Roger. And that isn't just because of the books. I just kind of felt it from what they were doing with this. Yeah. And the
separation of the two was just immediately like a bad feeling. It was too coincidental. It was, and I kind of like only learned that in hindsight. I didn't actually expect any relation between the two to happen, but to see that happen, it just makes me so curious as to what she wants with Lyra besides taking her on an adventure.
Now, earlier on, when the master was talking to the librarian, they did mention a couple things that I think are pretty important. One, about Lyra, we keep getting the sense that she's the chosen child.
Yes.
One, and then two, that she would have to make a betrayal as part of her journey.
Yes, and they're apparently defending her, or she's going to be super powerful, which might hurt her or them, and nobody knows. Everybody seems to know why, except for her or anybody directly related to her.
Yeah, and it's hard to say, like, so many people have betrayed her that it's hard to say, like, would it even, in my mind, I'm thinking, would it even really be much of a betrayal, considering the adults in her life?
Take care of this child, you fools. She is so good. She's so good.
Yeah. Ugh.
It's so sad.
She's already learning how to not trust at such a young age.
Which sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the way that the story is, she needs to go through it, but it's so hard to watch her get immediately betrayed by so many different people in her life, and to somebody who cares so much for the other people around her.
So with the time that we have, let's jump into Betrayals and start talking about episode 2, which is called The Idea of the North. Interesting title there, and we can talk more about that. Let's jump in. Let's talk about Lyra's relationship and stay with Coulter.
Yeah, so it starts off with her in the massive hotel, and she owns an entire floor of the hotel. First of all, where's she getting the money? That's immediately a little sketchy. But yeah, I as soon as we walked in, it felt like a prison.
Well, one thing I will say, as I was watching Coulter, I was doing my own personal character study of her.
Okay.
And she mentioned to Lyra, like, pretty quickly, hey, do you notice that I'm the only female here? And do you know how I got here? And basically explaining to her, like, I pretty much had to do and, wear certain things, act a certain way, and do certain things to get to where I am. And so I will say this, and without jumping into what happens in the books, regardless, I almost kind of understand Coulter better now, just from hearing her speak and just from watching her. And like when she had that moment with Lyra on the roof, where she said, hey, are you afraid of heights? And Lyra said, not really, no. But then Coulter's response was, I am, because I'm always worried that I'm going to want to jump.
Interesting. Yeah, I kind of piggybacking off of that, especially in the the scene with Lyra and Coulter in the mirror of her trying to morph Lyra into somebody that she believes will be safe in this world. We see good intentions within her, but there obviously are side things that are manipulating her perception of what she believes to be good in this world. But it's not really her fault, because she's had to deal with, for instance, a very man-centric academic world, in a world that she had to grow up in and be like, I have to be perfect. I have to do everything by the book, or else somebody's going to get me, and I'm not going to be able to continue what I have.
Yeah.
And even still, I mean, we see through episode 2 that she has to deal with the Magisterium breathing down her neck, and she can't do anything without their permission.
Now, the only thing that makes me jump from, okay, this is a gray area character, to, oh, no, she's bad, is the moment when Lyra overhears something in the study and is clearly spying.
Yeah.
After that whole ordeal, basically Coulter sicks her monkey on poor Pan.
That was terrifying.
Yeah.
The emotional and physical abuse just immediately towards that side note, I found it so interesting how they showed physical abuse without them showing Coulter like physically beating up on Lyra.
Yeah.
It was a very intriguing way to show that.
Because originally I thought that's where they were going to go, is that Coulter was going to strike her, like the way, a mother might do, a crazed mother might do to their poor child.
Yeah.
But I do like that in this world in general, we learned that if your demon is affected or killed, that you experience the same pains. That's how connected you are.
Oh, this is terrifying premise for later.
Yeah. And not only did we learn that, but in the middle of this heated moment, Coulter basically pulled a scar from Lion King and gave out information that I feel like she did on purpose, telling Lyra that her father is actually Asriel.
Yeah,
Do you buy that, first of all?
Yes.
Okay.
First of all, I definitely do, because and So just to be a little clear on this, we were talking beforehand, and I think we both kind of agree on this, and I think everybody that could. I have a feeling that she is actually Lyra's mother. I have a feeling. I don't know this to be true. Rachel wouldn't tell me.
I can neither confirm nor deny this statement because I do know the truth from the books.
And I'm sure people in the chat will definitely. By the way, if you're interested in talking to us, we have our chat here every Monday at 7:00. We're going to be in the chat. We're going to be watching you guys. So if you have any comments, if you have any questions, pull to us there. But I have a feeling that she was being very truthful about Asriel being piss poor at taking care of anybody, and she is included in the people that he is bad at taking care of.
Yeah, I agree with you because then she went on to say, "Oh, hey, like he had a woman in every town."
Oh, yeah.
Like I felt like she was the disgruntled ex-girlfriend.
Totally, definitely the disgruntled baby mama. Who's to say? I don't blame her though. I mean, if that is to be true, I mean, it's very obvious that Asriel is stuck in his work and isn't going to care about much else besides his work unless it's befitting to him.
Yeah, exactly.
Painting a weird picture for Asriel in the future of this show for me. I wanted to like him. He's so handsome.
Which is exactly the reason we should like all characters. I will say this, like, just as an aside note, he's very, like, if I could have imagined somebody playing this character, it would have been
James McAvoy.
And this is before, like, I read this book before he had ever come to fame. So, I think he's doing a great job as the character. But
congrats to the caster. You did great.
Seriously.
You did so well.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the Gobblers. So we find this episode, it was interesting. They quickly showed us where Roger was. We kind of saw their living conditions. We saw that the Egyptians were on a search party going to try and find them. And they finally realized, like, before, Gobblers have just kind of been like almost this, like, crazed tale that like kind of like the boogeyman.
Yeah.
But now the Egyptians are pretty much like, nope, they exist. It's real. They've got our kids.
Yeah, I didn't actually expect them to go the route that they did with the story. It kind of surprised me that they were keeping the kids for something, and I'm kind of glad that they went that direction because I thought that they were going to immediately start killing kids, and I was like, oh no, is this the direction the story goes in? But to see them kind of holed up in these rooms, like, I am so intrigued to see where this goes.
So the interesting thing, I loved how they handled it near the end of the episode where Lyra's left alone. She's been locked into the apartment, which is,
Poor girl.
Another red flag to her. Finally, like, everything is set off. So she's locked in the apartment. She actually learns how to kind of climb through, which is what Coulter's monkey was doing, which Coulter can separate from, and so they don't know what she is. But basically, the whole thing is Lyra climbs through this ventilation system, ends up in the study. As Lyra is kind of finding out about the Oblation Board,
Yes.
we kind of get the interspersed cut between that and Coulter further manipulating children by having them write letters to their family, including Roger, only to burn the letters at the end.
Coulter, you're going to die in this series, and I'm going to enjoy watching your character die for what you're doing to these children.
Yeah, she's just, like, beyond.
It's just evil. Like, I didn't expect it to get that evil immediately. But she is the person moving all the die around, moving all of the figures around, waiting for all of these things to happen with these children with those boxes, those carts that look like they're going on a train. I just cannot imagine this being anything except ritual sacrifice in the North.
And I won't say. So the whole thing too is that we learned that the Magisterium is actually not even, like, they're having problems with her, and we kind of we obviously find out she is the Oblation Board. They're having problems with her, so she is now acting faster to try and get all of her pieces set in motion. One thing I found especially interesting was the blueprints that Lyra finds.
Yeah.
In particular, it looks kind of like a cage with I think it was a child and
there was a child and their demon
separated.
in separate boxes, but kind of in the same thing. And it looked like there were, like, electrical coils sticking off of them. I wonder if that's going to try and separate them or just, like, mute them. I don't No, I don't. Rachel knows all of these things, and I don't know any of them.
I want to talk about this, but
don't.
I won't.
I need to see the rest of this series before I can talk about this in any length. By the way, they kept saying something that really intrigues me, that I have kind of a prediction based off of it, but I wanted to get maybe you can't even talk about it, but they keep saying that the children are going to the best possible place. And, like, the only thing that I can think of there is that they're going to heaven. They're going to kill these kids. They're going to kill these kids. I'm terrified.
I will hold my thoughts.
Abstain your thoughts.
I will abstain. Yes.
I hate being right.
I will not confirm or deny.
That's okay, but that's like... And the commentary that's going here, I haven't even been able to fully flesh out the commentary that they're trying to put forth about the church and the church's abuse of children under the veil of teachings and like the scholastic influence that the church has. There's so much to unpack.
And that's what I feel, that it's very allegorical.
Yes.
Especially, I think the books were written in the 80s. Let me double check.
I do think that's correct.
Yeah, just because it's not, and that's kind of what I was getting at earlier, is that these books, which were written, of course it doesn't say. All right, I will pull that. 1995, it looks like.
Yeah.
So still, that is, there was a lot going on in that time that was kind of, we can talk about this more later, but just the allegory is very obvious with what they're trying to get at in terms of kids and the church.
And it's kind of terrifying. I mean, there's so much that has been going on in the past 30 years that involves the church and their unfortunate digressions that have happened. I'm just so interested to learn more about Philip Pullman's kind of viewpoint on this, because that's one of the things that I have known going into this series, is that this takes very, very strong points in the idea of like religion and religion's relationship with humans. And when one of my friends was describing to me this series, they said like something about like killing God, and I was like, what does that even mean?
Now, that's a great time for us to talk about kind of the last two things of this episode. Boreal crossing into different worlds, because you bring up a great point. We learn that Boreal goes into regular Oxford. He's got 2 parking tickets. He gets out his ordinary smartphone. And like Arnold, I'm back.
What a funny and totally unexpected thing. Which, by the way, the intros so far for his Dark Materials, beautiful. It also showed a multiverse. It kind of teased everything at the beginning. I'm going to have to watch these intros way closely whenever they come on, because it is pretty much giving us some teasers before we even go into it, and I'm so excited about that.
So, but the whole thing is that we get to compare our world to this world, and at the very top of the show, it said this world is
much
different,
like ours,
but it has its similarities. And I think the whole thing is that without directly saying it, they're trying to say, hey, guess what? You could be going through the same thing.
Is that the foreword to the book? Do you know if there's a foreword to the book that's much like that?
I don't remember there being, but let me double check and actually like fact check that. But I don't believe so.
Because that would be especially now that we're in the internet age, and the internet age in like 2019 is way different than 1995 to 2000. So I'm wondering, like, I'm curious to know what is going to be different about the technology they have in present day our planet versus what they had.
And just a quick note too, I read these books when I was in 9th grade in 2003, and so they didn't have smartphones, and they didn't
very different worlds.
So even if they were comparing it to our world, some people probably would have been on dial-up still.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just so curious to see what they do with, like, here's modern technology, here's our world, and then here's Lyra's world. They are very different in the advancements they've made. I mean, we even see immediately he's got a smartphone, he's got his car, he's got his big fancy car, he's got this cafe that he goes to with that redheaded gentleman,
and he's looking for somebody, and he believes that Guman is still alive. And Guman has found a way to become a multiverse traveler,
which is crazy. I wonder where the rifts are. Where are the rest of these rifts? They can't just be that one. There's got to be tons of them all over the place.
Yeah. So let's jump and just really quickly talk about the party at the end and
Yes.
Lyra's escape, and
Gotcha.
then we'll get to our segments.
Absolutely.
So just really quickly, what did you make of the party? What did you make of the journalist and the butterfly?
The party, certainly terrifying immediately on the premise, just knowing that Coulter is throwing them, and we know how Lyra's attitude is going to be towards them. She has to be an obedient, good little girl, or else she is going to get beat up.
Yeah.
And you can see that on her face immediately, and I felt terrible. It felt trapping. And then to see, I think her name, I actually did catch it because I was hoping she was going to be a more major character. That got cut off pretty quick. Her name was Adele. That was the name of the journalist. And I was like, oh my God, yes, we have somebody on her side. And she's dead. We didn't even get a second with her. And that, like, how do you have a demon that fragile? That's what I'm concerned about for the future.
The problem is, now here's the thing, and I think that they are also trying to speak on the on children's ability to adapt to their environment, because a child has a demon that can adapt into any animal, really, whereas an adult, they're stuck.
I just had an epiphany.
So her butterfly was always going to be a butterfly from her coming of age. But adults are very, I think that's what they're trying to say, that as an adult, you are stuck in this one place, whereas children are more adaptable, and that's why.
I have a prediction based directly on that, but we'll talk about that in a second. I need to write it down.
So let's just jump into our segments. Let's start with our page to screen segment.
Flip the page.
Yeah.
Go to the page. That's it.
So let me just talk about a couple of the things. I am not going to get into detail because I don't want to give anything away.
Thank you.
Yeah. Otherwise, there's a lot I could talk about here. But basically, the major things from episode 1 and 2, we have, first of all, Lyra's hair. It should actually be blonde and curly. I know that's a tiny detail. Also, another big thing is the golden compass. She actually learns how to use it pretty quickly. A lot more quickly than they're showing in the series. I'm sure they have a reason, and it is working, and it's making things a little less easy for her, but she does have, it is an easier time. Also, so we also get a little bit with the, just with Roger in general, the timeline of when things are happening with him are a little bit different.
Okay.
So those were kind of the major things at this point. Let's go ahead and get to our news segment.
AfterBuzz TV News.
So today we have two main articles. The first one is talking about, it is the major headliner for his Dark Materials very recently, about the views and the view counts to the original episode to this episode. Apparently, in the first episode, they had about 7.2 million tuning in on the BBC, which, by the way, this broadcasts on the BBC before it comes to the US. And apparently on the second episode, it went down to 5.7 million. So the headlines have been, they're losing 1.5 million viewers on its second outing for the BBC. But luckily, I can say that the end of this article that Deadline gives says that the first installment was seen by 700,000 viewers in the US this past week, making it one of the best debuts HBO has ever seen on a Monday. And also, it's still 6.2 million viewers. That is nothing to be laughed at. That is something that we can still say is a very solid view count for the first two episodes. And the second one is from Radio Times, talking about the locations that this series actually is using, and most of the locations are actually based out of a studio that they have that is from the BBC, which a lot of people are kind of surprised by. I'm surprised by that personally, because so many of the outdoor scenes are beautiful, but I'm sure they're done by CGI at this point, because the BBC has advanced so much, as well as the rest of the world. But most everything that has been shown in here has been done in studio, built in studio, and then run through CGI.
Wow.
Which beautiful job with it. Oh my gosh. Everybody involved with this so far has been so impressive in their craft. Just the writing, the actors, the CGI, the sound, the music. It's been been beautiful. So that's our news for this week, but thank you so much to the cast and crew so far, and I'm so excited to see what continues.
Cool. Well, thank you, Vito.
You're welcome.
Our last segment, which we've all been waiting for, is our predictions.
Your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
Vito, would you like to start?
Yes, okay. My major prediction, and this is a series-wide prediction. I think that Lyra is going to be all-powerful with her ability to adapt her demon even past adulthood. And I don't know if we're going to be able to see that because I have a feeling that this series is going to take place with her mainly as a child, but I think it has something to do with the compass, that she's going to be able to turn her demon into anything that she wants to, because right now the main disadvantage that a lot of people have, especially with their demons, is that they can't change them. And that's like one of the big things that has been presented in this series. So I'm just curious as to see what the Golden Compass is going to be able to let her do, but I have a feeling that it's going to have something to do with that. I'm going to look away so you don't give it away.
I'm just going to say what I think might happen next episode without giving any spoilers.
Thank you.
I mean, I really don't know. They could throw us all for a loop.
That's true.
I'm thinking by next episode, she will be able to use the Golden Compass.
Okay, I would hope so. And I'm excited. If that is the case, I'm really excited to see what this thing does. I know it's not going to give her any answers. It's not a future predictor. Maybe it'll allow her to jump through rifts in the world.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling it has something to do with her demon.
And I think any other prediction I were to give might...
Is this a little bit of a spoiler?
So, because I kind of know who grabbed her at the end of the episode, so I don't want to say.
Oh, yeah. I also have a prediction about him. So actually, I have a twofold. I have another two that I think, since you can't really present any, I will try to present some. I think the man who we saw as like the person who gets people for the Gobblers, the one that has the demon, that's the wolf, or fox. It looks like a gray fox with orange eyes, or a wolf. I can't really tell. I have a feeling that he's not actually as bad as people are giving him to be. I think he might be a mercenary. Maybe, honestly, he might be Lin-Manuel Miranda, and we don't know it yet because we know he's going to be in this series. I don't know. The other one, this was something that I was thinking of, and then it went back and forth. Boreal. So I think Boreal is going to be, one, a very important character, and two, better than we think.
Just look at his name.
I know.
The Aurora Borealis.
Yes, exactly. I think he's supremely powerful. I think it's very obvious that he might be just like a Rift Walker or like a World Walker, whatever you want to tell it, that just has a different viewpoint or is getting money.
P.S. In Latin, Boreal means northern.
Oh my God, guys! I did know the Aurora Borealis, and I mean there are other pieces of media that I've seen that have Boreal in it, and it's just like there's no way that he's not going to be important.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think that about wraps up this week for His Dark Materials. Vito, where can everybody find you?
If you want to help me rift jump to a little bit and go to another world, you can find me at Twitter, at VScutti, at VSCUTTI, also on Instagram, at VScutti.
And I am Rachel Goodman. You can find me on Twitter at Rach Goodman or on Instagram on my author name at Rachel Radner Author. Until next week, we will be tune in next week, I should say, for episode 3. We will be here on Monday at 7 p.m. PST.
And make sure to thumb up and 5 stars on iTunes if you're listening to this on iTunes. Goodbye.
Bye, everybody.
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.